Hi guys, and welcome back to yet another review. This time around I'm gonna bring you a review which I think will be to the liking of the majority of you. As you guys know, I always like doing these mega comparisons, but I decided to bring, well, three IMs which are relatively new to the market. They've been out already for a couple of weeks, and they all fall within this category, within this, let's say, tendency that we have found of late of IEMs using microplanars of the BA style mainly. There are also microplanars being used, but of, let's say, kind of, they look like small DDs. And the IEMs in question are, well, the Simgot, the Supermix 5, which is a successor to the successful Supermix 4. I also have here the Dunu 242, which I will be talking about. I also have here the Juzear Harrier, and I have brought out a couple of other proposals in that genre, or that, well, genre not really is the correct word, in that, let's say, style or configuration, which uses DDs, BAs, and those microplanars. And I think I think it will be something that will be to the satisfaction of many, because each one of these IEMs have a particular characteristic, a particular style they went to, they try to achieve, a particular client base that they try to obtain, and the reality is they all are very well done. Obviously, yes, then I have made my personal preferences, I have made my personal choices, but I've also went to the extent of kind of giving, let's say, a grading of these IEMs, not only with regards to what my personal taste is, but also to what I consider then will be maybe another different style of listening that many of you will want, which is a more audiophile orientated kind of listening, very clean, very clinical, while my personal style is a more warm, more kind of old school organic style. Okay, but anyway, okay, so let's get this started. The first set of IEMs that I'm going to be, well, comparing to a certain extent, but the first IEM that I will be talking about is the Supermix 5. I've obviously brought out that Supermix 4, which made sense. It's the precursor to the Supermix 5. The Supermix 5 is basically the same configuration as the 4. It's got a single dynamic driver, two BAs instead of one. It brings a microplanar as well, and a bone conduction. The biggest change to the Supermix 4 is obviously that they've substituted the PZT for the bone conduction. The Supermix 4 already had the microplanar. It had just a single BA and a single DD like the Supermix 5. But anyway, in terms of the IM itself, it's a full metal shell, full metal shell in the faceplate. The actual body is still in resin like there was the Supermix 4. Beautiful build, really nothing that can be said there with regards to the build. It looks the part, it looks the business. This is the stock cable. Stock cable is a little bit on the tangly side, but I mean nothing that's going to be offensive in any way. Obviously detachable or exchangeable termination, yeah. Initially I was having a little bit of an issue with the cable, but this was just my particular cable. The 3.5 termination was not making proper connection, and I was having some problems, but then I swapped over to the 4.4 and it was fine. And then when I actually looked at the 3.5 millimeter connector or plug, there was a slight little defect there, but anyway, I think it was just something that went by without even being noticed. It's not, if I actually pressed it together with a little bit more force, they would connect up and everything would work fine on the one channel, which was the left, which was not working properly. But like I said, not an issue. The 4.4 is what I use the most. This is the case, nice little case, brings some decent accessories, and that's it. Anyway, as I was saying, the Supermix 5, it improves or tries to improve on the formula of the Supermix 4. The Supermix 4, as you guys will recall, was known for certain characteristics. I mean, the bass was tight. It was reasonably fast. Obviously, that a phenomenon that was helped out by the microplanar and the PZT, which helped clean up the bass and make it very tightish in its presentation. In terms of quantity, it had. I mean, it wasn't a bass monster, but it had good enough quantity. Some people thought that it could do a little bit more. Some found it excessive, but this is always down to that case that I talk about, which is what is your preference, what is your style, or what is the type of music you like listening to. In my particular case, I found the Supermix 4 a really interesting IM, and I've actually got 2 units, to be fair. But anyway, that's just me. You guys know that I have this OCD. But as I was saying, the bass was nice and tight and fast and good quantity. The mids were clean. I wouldn't say recessed in any manner, although with certain genres you could get a little bit that feeling because it kind of came across as a little bit of a V shape. I actually found that it was a little bit forward with certain female vocals. And the treble was really energetic, loads of air, but it could also be sometimes, and if you didn't choose the right tip or if you didn't have the best source adapted to the Supermix 4, it could be a little bit on the borderline hot side. Technically, timbre and tonality, I found it to be correct for the most part, only with a few exceptions here and there that the tonality sound perhaps a little bit artificial, but otherwise, I mean, in terms of separation, resolution, detail retrieval, I found it was more than capable and well within its price point. This was roughly about $150, give or take. And I think the takeaway here for the SM4 was that it was a really competent set when it came to price to performance ratio, and very capable in its technical capabilities. So if you were a person that really likes that more detail orientated sound, if you enjoy gaming, and if in terms of listening you like more pop music, more modern style EDM, yes, it will be this will be something that will be up your alley. On the other hand, if you're a little bit sensitive to treble, it can lead to some fatigue. Now, what does the SM5 attempt to do? They are using now an 8mm dynamic drive as opposed to the 10mm that they used before, and the first thing that you notice is that yes, it is a way more polished presentation than the SM4. I'll just call it SM4 and SM5 for the sake of being easier to identify them. It's a more neutral style of tuning. Bass is not as big, but in terms of quality, it is I'm not going to say a huge step forward, but it is a step forward under the right conditions in terms of its pairing with the source, and if the fit is good, and if you are in a place where you can really enjoy the SM5's capabilities, you will very easily notice that the SM4's bass is a more polished bass than the the SM5's bass is a way more polished bass than the SM4, although in lesser quantity volume wise, but quality wise it is definitely a step forward. It's a cleaner, more polite bass. Maybe it loses a little bit of the punch of the SM4, but it trades that loss of punch by giving us extra cleanliness, extra detail. So it's a very it's a mature bass presentation, let's put it that way. Mids are again more linear, more natural in the way they come across. Treble significantly more controlled than the SM4. That's the reality at all volume levels, with less glare, let's put it that way, if that's even the correct word for me to use, that could on occasions come out of the SM4. In terms of its technical capabilities, it is still a more technically capable IEM, or rather, it's still an IEM which focuses on the technicalities, so detail retrieval, cleanliness, layering. I mean, absolutely incredible. And because of those improvements that have been done both in the mids and in the highs, and that balance that's been struck now between all three frequency ranges, it is a step forward again in terms of overall clarity over the SM4. So I would say that the kind of the takeaway here for the SM5 is that it's a refinement of this Supermix concept. Maybe some might find it a little bit, excuse me, less exciting than the Supermix 4, but it's definitely a more refined, a more correct sounding IEM. So definitely will be suited for, if you want to do more kind of studio style listening, if you want to clarity, if you want balance, if you want to listen to proper music, if this is even proper, if this is even the correct way to put it. But I'm sure you guys understand. And its weakness, like I said, is because it's got less bass quantity, it can at times, be some might find a little bit underwhelming. To that extent, what did I do to kind of help see if there would be an improvement? Much like on the SM4, with using an impedance adapter, in this case a 25 open impedance adapter from Venture Electronics. While on the SM4, using this impedance adapter, the bass just increased dramatically, and yes, maybe even made things more engaging, more entertaining, kind of helped mitigate a little bit of that extra treble, which wasn't as polished as would be ideal. On the SM5, using this impedance adapter, the extra bass that is gained is very it's in the right quantity, let's put it that way. So you gain that extra bass energy, that or quantity that you may be wanting and you are not having, without, in my opinion, any loss of the quality. So the quality, in my opinion, and honestly, I didn't feel that it lost it. So like I was saying, I apologize for the phone call. So the usage of this impedance adapter, it just gives us that little extra amount of bass energy, without that coming at a cost of the highs, of the mids and the highs losing any of their clarity. If anything, I would say that gives the Supermix 5 an added organicness to the sound, even though that was not its intended premise. Ultimately, what I think is the takeaway that I want to you guys to take from this suggestion is, if you enjoy the Supermix 5 as it is, and I think that if you are a person that wants that more correctness in the sound, if you are looking after detail and technicalities, then this can be something just for you to try out for the sake of trying out. If you are a person that enjoys that type of sound, but on occasions with different music genres, you want to have a little bit more that organic, old school type of presentation, then the impedance adapter will definitely be something worthwhile considering. And as I said, it's something that you truly have to experience. Honestly, I think it's the best is to experience it, and then you'll understand. Overall, do I think the Supermix 5 is an improvement over the Supermix 4? Yes, definitely, without a question. They've taken this concept, refined it, polished it, and offered us an IEM which is significantly more mature. Yes, it has come at a price increase. It's now something, the Supermix 5 is now something which has crossed that $200 price point. It is now $215, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel that the price hike over the SM4 is justified, and does make sense. It definitely does make sense. Anyway, with regards to the Supermix 4, Supermix 5, my apologies. I think I've talked enough. Let me now just pause this for a second and carry on with the next one. Okay, the next IEM that I will be talking to you about is the Juzear, the Harrier. What is the Harrier? The Harrier is a 1+6+2. So there's a single DD, 6 BAs, and 2 microplanars. I've got here to kind of set the stage for the Harrier, the 61T, the butterfly, if I recall correctly the name. Let me just make sure that I'm not speaking nonsense here. Butterfly, I think that it's what it says there. Let me just, yes, butterfly. And you guys might ask, but why the 60? Why the butterfly, the 61T, comparing it with, oops, focus, come on. But why the 61T compared with the Harrier? Well, this is not a comparison, but I think that the 61T served as the base, or as the basis for the Harrier. It's in essence got the same configuration with the addition of the two microplanars. And the other different, well, and in essence, the tuning style has also been very much kind of maintained. And what do I mean by this? Well, the 61T was known for being an IEM which was very smooth in its presentation. And some people even kind of, I would say, I'm not going to say criticize, but kind of put it down for that laid back nature that the 61T had. It had an extremely smooth mid-range and upper mid-range and treble with a prominence on the bass, especially on the sub bass, with a kind of a gliding style of a bass. But it wasn't aggressive, maybe because of the way that the upper mids, treble, and were tuned. It could come across on occasions as maybe a little bit slow, a little bit sluggish, kind of, let's say, panda style. But the reality was that the 61T was all about being very organic, very emotional in the way that it presented its songs, or played back its songs rather. Yes, in terms of its technicalities, the timbre and the tonality, in my opinion, were really good. Technically, yes, it wasn't in its element. It did lack a little bit of that sparkle, that twinklies and sparkles up top. So in terms of the resolution and the detailed retrieval, it could be with a little bit more, but it wasn't lacking in any way. It wasn't like if it was bad or anything of the sort. I very much enjoyed the presentation of the 61T, and I was a very big fan of the 61T from day one. And it was mainly due to this, like I said, very laid back presentation, this very nice organic style of bass, with very pleasant mids. Really, it was nice. It was a nice warm sound that maybe lacked a little bit of detail up top, and that's why I think some people just didn't enjoy it. Enter the Harrier. And what is the Harrier's tuning? In general, it's a warm, balanced, relaxed type of tuning, much like the 61T. But now, because of the addition of the microplanars, there's a little bit more detail up top. However, they have not overdone it. They've not overcooked it. And what I mean by that is it's maintained that bass presentation that we had from the 61T, although it's now a more tucked style of bass instead of a more gliding style of bass presentation. So it's got a tuck, which kind of basically tucks in at about 200 hertz. That tuck does mean that it loses a little bit of impact, but because there's also a little bit more energy up top, especially in that 2.5 to 8 kilohertz area, that extra energy kind of helps clean up the bass that is very sub-bass focused, and give us the illusion that there's got enough slam. Yes, I won't deny there are songs that I would have liked a little bit more noticeable slam, but overall it's a very rounded bass, very smooth, non-aggressive. It's a very, very high quality bass. There's no denying that. Mids, it takes again on the formula of the 61T, and what I mean by that is, again, it's very mature, very easy to listen mids, no fatigue, nothing. Maybe on occasion, you could think of them as overly thick, in the sense that there could be just a little bit more liveliness, a little bit more that feeling of not too overly laid back. Okay. As for the treble, very safe, very well executed treble. There's plenty of detail. It just gives that extra twinkle and sparkle that the 61 was missing. And all of that then means that in terms of its technicalities, I still think the timbre and tonality are its biggest its biggest characteristic. Timbre and tonality is very nice on the Harrier, but now we have that extra amount of resolution that we were lacking on the 61T. So you have a more high quality timbre, a more high quality capability of retrieving details and so on and so forth. Although having said that, when you consider its price point, we are talking $300 roughly, if I'm not mistaken. There could be a little bit more. So what is the consensus? What is the takeaway here for the Harrier? It's about a non-offensive, non-fatiguing, type of listening experience. Nothing is extreme, nothing is overcooked, it's just about being very smooth, very easy to listen for longer sessions, especially if you like listening to older recordings. I think the Harrier brings out that sort of like 80s pop music and so on. It brings that style, that genre of music, the desired effect that I think we all want, which is a very high level of musicality. And I think that's the biggest, I think it's the main thing you should take away. It's a very highly musical IEM. That its real drawback, if you want to kind of nitpick, is that although there is more detail, more excitement as compared to the 61T, it still lacks a little bit. And I think the thing that could have maybe improved upon that was if there was a switch just to give it a little bit of a boost. Now, again, this is just a suggestion, something that could have been done. I think that what they wanted to do was make a polished 61T. They've achieved it. They've taken the formula of the 61T, which I think is very well tuned, improved upon it slightly. The bass is as deep but cleaner now because of the extra energy that we have in the mids and upper mids. So we no longer have that sensation that things here are slightly panda-ish, like slightly sluggish. There's more excitement here, definitely, and adds just the right amount of twinkles and sparkles up top. And it's made for a specific crowd of people. So more about that smooth listening experience. I think that's the best thing that I can say. Yeah. I think that in essence concludes here the Harrier. So I think we can now move on to the Dunu 242. Let me just pause this for a second. So what is the sound here of the Dunu Da Vinci in terms of the bass? It's got a huge bass performance. I mean, really big sub bass performance. The second dynamic driver then helping out with bringing that much desired impact of the mid bass and extending that integration into the low mids and mids in an exceptionally well done way. And then all of that then bringing that slightly warm, relaxed mid-range presentation with vocals being very lush, very engaging, very satisfying, and then again transitioning into the treble in a very smooth, safe, non-aggressive type of manner. And if there's one thing that can be said about the Da Vinci in terms of its treble presentation, is that it's really well done. Some might argue, oh, but it's overly thick, oh, but it's not, it lacks detail. I personally don't think so. I think that Da Vinci is, as I said, one of the best IEMs that Dunu has ever done. The lessons learned here can definitely, you can definitely see that what they've learned here, they've translated them onto the 242 and improved upon them on the 242. Technically, good macro details, average on the micro details, timbre and tonality, definitely the best technical capability. Soundstage and imaging, okay, fine, nothing there that can be detrimental to anybody really. So I would say that the takeaway here for the Da Vinci is that it's a very musical IEM. If bass is definitely the star, so if you enjoy a nice bass presentation, you will definitely like this. you know, it's all about being fun, but being mature at that fun, not being it overly. You know, if I was to compare these two cars, like I sometimes do, like doing, this is not a racer tuning. This is a nice tuning done to a car, tastefully done. You know, you've done things in a tastefully manner, and it just looks the business. It looks very smart, and that's the case here. It just sounds very smart. It just sounds very correct. It's a very easy to listen and a very easy to like IM, in my opinion. What is now, my apologies, sorry, just before I carry on and to continue the chain of thought that I've done before. So this is like something that will be definitely best suited if you like hip hop or you know, the occasional rock music, electronic music, really well done. If and again, if the you know, you want ultimate cleanliness to the sound and not so much a bass fan, then this is definitely not the IM for you. Anyway, that's that done. Enter the 242. What is the 242? I would consider the 242's tuning, again, a warm neutral type of tuning, but more balanced. The way that the bass is done, it's not that it's significantly less than on the DaVinci, no, but what we have got here is a more forward presentation in the mid-range, which obviously we're talking about a difference here of about 4 dBs in that 800 to about 2 kilohertz area, which livens up things. It just brings that section of the spectrum alive. So you could even say that the mids now sound more natural, not overly warm as they do on the DaVinci on occasion. So female vocals definitely sound absolutely incredible. So I would say bass is controlled, again a product of that extra liveliness that we now have in the mids. Bass is controlled. It's by no means a bass head IM as is the DaVinci, but I think that's more down to the product of that extra energy that we now have in the mids, which kind of shifts the balance. While here the balance was towards the bass, here the balance has kind of shifted more towards the mids, upper mids and treble. And so the sensation that you get is that the bass is very well done. It's controlled. It's a very high quality bass. It's got the right amount of warmth when it should have the right amount of warmth, but doesn't come across as bass head in any way. The mids, natural, a phenomenal timbre, and like I said, that forwardness I think has helped make the mid-range presentation with vocals, especially female vocals, just that little extra more satisfying, more engaging, at least for my liking. And then with regards to the treble, again, very safe, very well executed implementation of the microplanars, just the right amount of energy, but definitely more alive, the microplanars here, than what they are, for example, in the Juzear Harrier. And by alive is just down to the way that they've been tuned. They've just been tuned with more energy. So the technicalities of the 242 are solid, really solid. Although I mean, I'm not going to say they are not class leading, but because there are other IMs which also have really phenomenal technicalities at this price point, and not as elaborate in their configuration. But my personal opinion is I feel that 242 is definitely one of the most most technically capable, correct IEMs currently that we can find even at this, especially at this price point. So I would say that the takeaway, the main points that to take away from the Dunu 242 is that it's got that Dunu style of sound. Definitely, it's a very coherent tuning, very smooth, very realistic. Some might, and I've heard some people even say that it wasn't exciting, it was just a little bit bland. No, I didn't find none of that. I think that it's got very much the Dunu house style of sound done. It's an IM which for long listening sessions will be an absolute pleasure, and I enjoyed it very much so. Acoustic vocals, really well done. Especially the treble is one of the things that I was really impressed, because the Harrier, it's got a very nice easygoing treble, but on occasions you want a little bit more. Okay, fine. Here the energy is so good, and it doesn't matter which volume level you have. It's just really very well done. What is then maybe the the weakness that you can point for the 242, if that is even being fair, let's put it that way, is that and I have to admit that I was a person that did have that, was that although I was impressed by its cleanliness, by its sound, by its overall tonality and timbre, my initial presentation when I was listening to the Dunu for the first few times was that it just, I don't know, it lacked a little bit more bass authority. But that's, like I said, that's again me. That's my personal preference. It just lacked a little bit more that I'm here kind of bass presentation. And so it took away a little bit of that wow factor that you sometimes hear, especially with the songs that you know well, and that you have that IEM or those two IEMs that when they do that song, they do it really well, and you kind of have it in the back of your mind. Okay, how does a 242 do it compared to those IEMs? And one IEM, two IEMs that jump to mind, for example, is I like that slam that I find in certain jazz songs. That, for example, the MK12, the Tourist does, or the ODA, the Helios, the 1.audio, the Helios does as well. And you're expecting a little bit of that, and okay, it's there. But the 242 is an IM that grows on you, and when you start going back and forth like I did from the 242 to the Da Vinci, you start understanding that that wow factor, that that captivating, let's say, way of doing bass is there. It's there, like it is on Da Vinci. It's just that because we have better mid-range presence, better vocal presentations, everything is more live, it kind of can seem at times just a little bit kind of, okay, I was expecting a little bit more. But when you listen to it carefully and you start then going back and forth between IMs, you start noticing, no, it's there, and it's in the right quantity, and it definitely does give us a product which is definitely, I'm not going to say more polished, but more mature in the way. So it's an IM that's going to be for a different crowd of people, ultimately, in my opinion. This will be something that, like I said, acoustic, jazz, things with a lot of vocals, this will definitely shine. That's where the 242 will shine. Now, does it mean that it can't do some EDM? No, by no means. I thought that it still did all the all the EDM and all the pop music that I like listening to. It did it fine. I had no issues with that. So I think that's the kind of ultimate takeaway. Yeah, it is a versatile IEM, and ultimately I would say more complete and more versatile than even the Da Vinci. And like I said, I've praised the Da Vinci plenty, so for me to say that, I do consider the 242 capable, definitely capable. Okay, that covers the IEMs that I was telling you that I was going to talk about. Now what I'm going to be doing is positioning these three with some options in this configuration that I've mentioned or talked about here. All right, so just give me 1 second so I can clear things up here. Okay, so now let's position here the Dunu 242, the Harrier, the Simgot Supermix 5. On this top side here, I've got the Performer, the full Performer 5+2 or Performer 7, whichever way you want to talk. The Ziget Horizon, and on this end here, the Slevo, the Major Audio Slevo 224. Again, these are all IEMs that have got microplanars in them, and they all fit together in this big group here. There are, of course, slight differences here between all of them, and they are going to be either best suited for either two particular styles are basically divided into style 1, which is more clinical, more detail orientated, and then style 2, which is where I fit, which is a more organic type of presentation. Just kind of giving an overall kind of characteristic of sound of all of them. With regards to the 224, bass is good. It's a moderate bass. It's very dynamic, not very deep but very mid bass capable. Let's put it that way. Mids are clear and very vocal forward, I would say. Treble is airy and detailed. Overall, I would say balanced, naturalish kind of sound. But there's a little bit of color distance to the sound, but fine. With regards to the Simgot Horizon, bass is very controlled. Bass is one of the best basses here, in my opinion. Really controlled, really well done bass. Mids are there, that you feel the presence of the vocals, you feel the presence of the female singer, of the male singer. Very well done. Treble, it's bright but well done. So I would say that it's an IM that overall comes across as very detailed focused, very detail orientated. So it's musical, but the musicality there is not where it shines. The same goes here for the 224 from Slevo. Not musicality is not where it shines. And then the full the Performer 5.2 or 5+2 or whichever way you're going to call it. It's got a nice punchy bass. It's a strong, nice punchy bass. Mids are warm, full, very well executed, very nice, very typical full kind of mid presentation. The high frequency, sorry, it's rich. It loads of detail, all the twinkles and sparklings. So overall, I would say it's an engaging IM. But very musical. If I have to be totally fair, of the three of them on top there, it's the most musical of the three. Okay. The bottom ones, well, I've talked about it, but I can just quickly run by it again. Not a problem. With regards to the Dunu 242, it's in essence it's a controlled bass with a very natural style of mids and a very airy, natural again treble. It's a neutral, very musical type of presentation. Okay. The Juzear Harrier, the warm bass with relaxed mids and smooth treble. I think that's the best way of putting it. A very safe, fatigue-free listening. Okay. And as for the SM5, neutralish type of bass. It's a very high quality bass, but neutralish. It's not not emphasized, none of the sort. The mids are very linear, very clear, very detailed, smooth treble. It's a very refined, balanced type of presentation. Okay, I think that's the best way of kind of categorizing every one of these IEMs. Now, where do they all fit with regards to each other, and again with regards to the that's those two styles, the audiophile correct, the style one, and then the organic fun type of presentation. I would say, and again, mind you, this is my personal preference, the way I like listening to music. I would say that when it comes to the style one, the more let's say detailed type of presentation, the Horizon takes the cake. Okay, the Horizon is the best, with the Supermix coming in second, then the Dunu 242, and then I would probably say the Afu. So in that kind of, if I'm to give 4 places, the Harrier is just not an IM that shines when it comes to that very detailed, orientated type of presentation. And the Slevo, I think it just is, I would say, how can I put it? It's got details, but it just you get a sensation that it's not as polished as the others. So Horizon, the Simgot, the Dunu, and then the Afu. I mean, the Horizon definitely does stand out. These are going to be very close to each other, definitely. As for the most, let's say, most organic, most that style of preference that I particularly like the most, I'm going to say that in its stock format as they are, without doing anything to them, and not the one that's the best for me is the Dunu, the 242, with a very close a full 5.2, and then the the Harrier, and Simgot the Supermix 5, they come in third place. Well, actually, to be fair, I would say the Horizon, the Harrier, and the Simgot, they're coming in third place. Guys, please, take note of the following, and I want to make this perfectly clear. This is me. This is how these IEMs fit my ears and how they come across to me. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same thing for you. Now, one thing that is, I think, will be a general consensus, and that I will say is something that very few will probably disagree, is that yes, in terms of overall technical capabilities and being very highly detailed, yes, the Horizon is definitely an IEM that will take the win here. It is a super detailed in that department. In terms of its of then the more organic, more fun and engaging style of sound, which for me, and I think again will be a general consensus, takes the cake here. I think it's the Dunu 242. The Harrier, again, like I said, it's a very nice IM, but it just takes that concept of fun and engaging and organic just a little bit too far, and it loses a little bit of the detail. The Simgot, kind of again, the same situation when compared to the 242. It's detailed, but here it just lacks that little extra bass that would have made it just a little bit more satisfying in terms of its overall engagement. And the Horizon, just again, it's just more technically inclined. It takes away, it moves away from what overall that organic fun presentation for me should be about. But ultimately, and I think that the main thing that should be taken away here from this whole kind of comparison that I've done here is that every one of these IEMs will definitely have a crowd of people that will they will appeal to. Every one of them, it's got a very high quality build. They've hit the mark in what they wanted to do perfectly, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure that some of you were wanting me to say, oh, but what's the overall winner? Well, we have IEMs here which have varied price points. But if I have to kind of say, and again, this is not me trying to be mean or throwing down a brand or something, but if I have to kind of say here, which is the IEM that maybe out of these particular ones, which maybe kind of is not in the same overall league, although it's got a very competitive price, is the Slivo. The Slivo, it's a very good IM, but it's just not on the same level overall performance as the rest here. Then the one that I think the next ones that will probably not appeal to everybody, will probably be something like the Harrier. So the Harrier and the Slivo, they kind of lose because of that. The Harrier again also has something going against it, which is it's entered a price point where we already have the likes of the Dunu 242 very close to it and so on. And that basically just leaves us with four, which I think are the more overall likable ones, and then it's just a question of just slight adjustments here. Do you like something which is more technically capable, which is the case of the Horizon or of the Simgot, the Supermix 5, or do you want something which is a little bit more engaging in terms of its organic presentation, a little bit more musical in its presentation? They are full, and the Dunu 242, in my opinion. All right. Anyway, guys, I hope this was informative enough. I hope I was able to clarify some doubts. I've been working on this review now for quite a while, and I tried to condense everything as best as I possibly could. And I'm sure maybe I've missed a few points here, but as always, if there's questions that you want to ask me, please feel free to do so, and I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. You take care now. Bye bye. Okay, as for the graphs, let's see here. let's start here with the Simgot, the SM5, the Supermix 5, 9. There we go. I should actually give you guys and show you guys the Supermix 4 to be totally fair. So let me just get it here quickly. Supermix SM4, where are we? My apologies. I should have prepped this before actually starting the review, but anyway, I'm sure you guys won't be too upset. So SM4 Supermix 4, there we go. Okay, just normalize this at 500 hertz so you guys can see the difference. Anyway, okay, so I think it's self-explanatory. The SM5 in black, basically it's got the same style as the SM4, but definitely more bass in the SM4, not better bass, more bass. The mids are also a little bit more forward, but you get a feeling of more V-shaped and a slight recess actually here in this area as opposed to the SM5, which sounds significantly more coherent, and doesn't lack any of the detail or anything of the sort. I mean, it's a the Supermix 5 is definitely an improvement of the Supermix 4's basic formula. If anything, as I said before, it just, the bass energy just come down a little bit, but with the addition of the impedance adapter, we gain here an extra 2-3 dBs. In terms of this curve, it just increases ever so slightly, and maintaining all of the upper end as it is still, and it just sounds really good both ways. Honestly, I can't fault it. Okay, so that's the Supermix 4 and the Supermix 5. So I'm just going to leave the Supermix 5 there. Well, actually, just take it out so it doesn't confuse. Then we have here the Juzear, the Harrier, which is this one. Okay, and again, I actually should put here the 61T so that things are done in a more correct manner. 61T, here we go. Okay, and again, let me just normalize this again at 500 hertz. There we go. The 61T and the Harrier, as you can see, very similar again in their overall style of tuning. The 61T more gliding style, the Harrier a kind of that more tucked in bass style, but definitely more energy on the Harrier as compared to the 61T. Again, these two diagrams are not true representations of what you actually end up hearing. You would not think that they are as dark sounding as they actually are, both of them, but the Harrier is definitely more detailed, or it's definitely got a little bit more detail and cleans up the bass and makes the bass a little bit more exciting. So that's the Harrier and the 61T. So let's get this out of the way here, and then finally the Dunu, the 242. Where are we? Dunu 242. So let me just take it at 242, and again, to be totally fair, I should of course place here the Dunu Da Vinci, and that's what I'm going to be doing now. So Dunu Da Vinci, I apologize guys, I really apologize. Dunu Da Vinci, where are we? Da Vinci, here we go. That's it. Let me just normalize it again at 500 hertz, and then we talk. So as you can see, very similar again, the whole tuning style of one and the other. But that extra energy that's been given here in terms of the 242 in the mids to upper mids, and then that detail also increased here up top, just makes the perception of the bass that comes out not feel as warm and as engaging as on the Da Vinci. But I think the most correct thing here would be to say that on the Da Vinci, the lack of energy or the pursuit of making the mids sound more organic and more polished, and not having that BA timbre come out unnecessarily, has made it sound more warm, while the 242 sounds more detailed. So two different crowds, two different styles, definitely, but you can see that, much like in the case of the Harrier and the 61T, the Dunu, the 242, in my opinion, went and fetched a lot of its basic DNA on the Da Vinci, definitely, without a question. And I mean, it's evident here by the graph as well. As a final then comparison of all of these three with the other ones that we talked about. So if we are going to talk about, let's just throw them all together, and that's that, and that, not complicate things. Okay, this is the graph of the Aful, and if you guys remember when I was talking earlier, I mentioned that the Aful kind of emulates a lot of the musicality and the balance that we get on the 242. Let me just change the color here to black so it stands out a little bit more. And I think the graph now, when I superimpose both graphs, you can understand what I mean. They really do sound very, very musical, very, very capable in their organic presentation of what they're trying to achieve. Okay, and I think the graph is very self-explanatory. The Simgot, the Supermix 5, you would think, okay, kind of has some of the essence here of the Dunu, but you mustn't forget the SM5 has only got a single driver in doing the lower frequencies, while we have two on the 242, and you notice it. It's perceivable. The quality is there in both cases. Obviously, one is just relying on a single 8, while the other is relying on a 10 and an 8, if I'm not mistaken. And so there will be the differentiation that's normal. If any more energy was given, then you wouldn't have the balance that you have on the 242, and that's the reality. The Juzear, the Harrier, if I throw it in there, again, you would think by looking at the graph, okay, it's going to sound very similar to the others. And no, of the three, it's definitely the one that's the darker sounding one. I mean, it's not dramatically darker, but compared to the other twos, you definitely do notice, especially if I compare it to the 242, you can notice there's a different amount of energy from one end to the other, and even compared to one to the Simgot, the Supermix 5. Let me just put it there and take away the Dunu for a second. Even compared to the SM5, you do notice that the SM5 is a little bit more detailed. It's not unfair to say this. Now, what is the biggest handicap for the Harrier, in my opinion? It's the price. I think if the Harrier had settled for a price in the mid 200 price bracket, mid to lower 200 price bracket, I think it would have been more successful, definitely. That's just my opinion. I mean, the Harrier, the 61T, the Butterfly, you can now pick that up for like $160, and I'm sure with time the Harrier will also come down. But when you say it's $160, basically the same IEM, just got two more planars. 210, 220, I think would have been a more sensible price. Just to throw in here the CAK LVX, the 224, for you guys to understand here something. The 224, looking at the graph on its own, and when I compare it to this, for example, the SM5, you can see the similarities is incredible. I mean, the 224 is the blue line here. Yes, it's got more detail up top, but it's just, at lower volumes, maybe you could be convinced that it's maybe the same IEM, although I think you'll pick up on it eventually. But it's when you start taking to mid to high volumes that you definitely see that 224 is just not in the same league as the SM5. It's not as polished, and by consequence, it's not in the same league as the Dunu 242. And the Harrier is just too different, but you can pick up on it quite easily. Let me see here what else. Supermix, Full Performer, and that's it, guys. I think I've mentioned everything. I was forgetting. Oh my God, how could I? This is absolute blasphemy. I was forgetting the Simgot, the Horizon. Let's take here the Horizon. So this is the Horizon compared with the Simgot. you know, again, a very similar style of tuning, but the Horizon is definitely more energetic, you know, and very much in this part of the spectrum. Yeah, very noticeable. Also, it's got a bigger bass driver, so more bass, definitely. It's a look. The Horizon is definitely one of the nicest IEMs I heard last year. Take, you know, by no means am I even saying anything ridiculous when I say this. It is. But it's you know, ultimately what I'm trying to kind of convey is not only my personal taste, but you know, those IMs which I think will be the most pleasant, the most satisfying for more people. And you know, it wouldn't be completely out of bounds to say that the Ziget, the Horizon, will probably be one of those IMs as well. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, they all, in every single one of these IMs has done their work properly. I mean, just for the sake of comparison, yeah, the Horizon to the Dunu, to the 242. You know, not that significant difference, but you listen to one, you listen to the Dunu, and you listen to the Horizon. Both are really good at what they've pretended to do, but you can notice, it's noticeable that the Dunu is more polished, more laid back, more neutral, more relaxed, while the Horizon, and you wouldn't pick up that by just looking at the graph, while the Horizon is way more alive, way more energetic. It's a detail monster, by you know, and it's noticeable. To a certain extent colored, but it's well done. Period. It's really well done. And that's basically it, guys. I think I've said everything. I don't want to drag this on anymore. Like I said before, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer. You take care now. Bye bye.